Hello, hello, my friends. I'm Ali Melendez, and welcome to Sports Insiders The Spin, where we are finally over the waiting. I mean, we got week 1 of the college football season finally upon us, and though we got a little taste last week, we get our first full slate of action in what should be an absolutely amazing weekend. Some pretty incredible matchups. So let's get right to it, shall we? Here with a look at some of the biggest games of the long Labor Day weekend, our very own Drew Butler and Gabe Ikard joined this week by a very special guest, Mr. Danny Kanell. Welcome, fellas.
What's up, Ali? Thanks so much. Drew Butler here on Sports Insider, joined by none other than my man Gabe Ikard. And of course, since it's week 1 and the college football season is kicking off on this Labor Day weekend, we got to bring in a very special guest, our very own Danny Kanell. Danny, look, I know week 0 was a little bit of a sore spot for you. The Florida State Seminoles go over to Dublin, Ireland. They lose on a last-second field goal. We won't get into all of that. We got a fresh slate of games to get right into, and boy, it is a jam-packed week starting Thursday, going all the way through Monday night. So with that, let's dive right into a big top 15 matchup that's taking place in Atlanta, Georgia. It's the Aflac kickoff game, noon Eastern kickoff on Saturday. 14th ranked Clemson taking on the number 1 preseason ranked Georgia Bulldogs. Gabe, this is a pretty big line here. Georgia is a 13.5-point favorite. The over-under is set at 48.5 points.
Love that both of these teams are playing this football game. And I could see the first half being competitive, but ultimately, I think Georgia's talent and depth is going to take over in the second half. I think they've got an advantage at the line of scrimmage, and I think they've got an advantage at the quarterback position with Carson Beck. We just haven't seen Cade Klubnik go out there and pick apart an elite defense in his college football career. And I just don't see that starting against this Georgia defense. I think that Clemson's defense will have to force multiple turnovers to make this one interesting. And that's just a lot to ask, especially in front of a pro-Georgia crowd in Atlanta. Give me the dogs to pull away late. I'll lay the 13.5 with Georgia.
Gabe, it's a lot of points. I kind of like Clemson getting the 13.5, but you know what I love? And your analysis kind of feeds right into this. I like the under. I think this is going to be a defensive bloodbath. We saw these teams play a few years ago. It was 10-3. The only touchdown was a pick 6 thrown by DJU in that game. I don't think it'll be quite that low scoring, but I don't think it's going to be a shootout by any means either. You mentioned Cade Klubnik. I don't know how he's going to do year 2 of the Garrett Riley system. They need a receiver to step up. They have a lot to replace. But so does Carson Beck. No Brock Bowers, no Ladd McConkey. They could take some time to iron out things offensively. So I like a lower scoring affair as my favorite bet. I'm going under the total.
Danny, you bring up a great point, that 2021 kickoff game in Charlotte. Just a few years ago, these two teams played, and what a different narrative it was. At that point, Georgia had still yet to get over the hump. Clemson was a perennial powerhouse, and things have changed big time. Georgia's going for their 3rd national championship in 4 years, and Dabo Swinney and the Clemson Tigers are trying to refine their own identity. And it starts with quarterback Cade Klubnik and Garrett Riley. Can they find some consistency? They kind of started getting in a groove late season last year after a pretty rocky start, and Georgia does have to replace a lot on offense, specifically those skill players that you mentioned, Brock Bowers, Ladd McConkey, Marcus Rosemy-Jack Saint. But when you go to Georgia's backfield, and especially their depth on the offense line, I kind of lean towards where Gabe is looking. Second half, grind them down. They've got tons of depth. They should be able to run the ball. X factor here, is Trevor Etienne going to play? The transfer running back from Florida, he got into a little bit of trouble in the offseason. Some of those charges have been dropped. It's been pretty up in the air. Head coach Kirby Smart playing it close to his chest, saying, hey, I never talk about suspensions. There's been some similar instances in the past where student athletes are able to play after those charges are dropped. And Etienne is a bona fide SEC baller, a guy who can step in, take some of that pressure off of Carson Beck, and grind out a big-time Georgia victory in a neutral site game. A couple of years ago in this very same game, Dan Lanning and the Oregon Ducks came in. I took the points with Oregon. I was made to look like a fool. Georgia was way more prepared. Again, that depth and experience showed up, but you got to go with the head coach and the quarterback combo here. Carson Beck, a Heisman favorite. I think the Dogs win the line of scrimmage on both the O-line and the D-line. kind of reluctant to do it here, but less than 2 touchdowns. I'll lay the 13.5 points. And Danny, I also like your pick on the under. The primetime game on Saturday night is a very good one. 7:30 p.m. Eastern kickoff. We're heading to College Station, Texas. The 7th-ranked Notre Dame Fighting Irish are taking on the 20th-ranked Texas A&M Fighting Aggies. Gabe, right now, this is kind of a head-scratching line. Texas A&M is a 3-point favorite at home. The over-under here is 46.5 points.
I think the reason you see the line the way it is because Kyle Field is a really tough place to play. And Jimbo Fisher did not leave the cupboard bare there for Mike Elko. That is an extremely talented roster that A&M has. One of the most talented in all of college football. A lot of people think it's more talented than what Marcus Freeman's got at Notre Dame. And when I look at this game, I keep coming back to Riley Leonard and Mike Elko. Who knows Leonard's weaknesses better than his former head coach? And I wonder what Elko can do to use that as his advantage in this football game. Plus, you've got Notre Dame starting a true freshman left tackle against Nick Scourton. That is just not an ideal situation there for the Irish. I think the environment combined with what I'm expecting from that Texas A&M defense under Elko, I think the Aggies get it done. I'm laying the 3 with Texas A&M. I think it's a new era of Texas A&M football, and I expect that defense to play at a very high level in Mike Elko's opener.
I am with you, Gabe. I like the Aggies a lot. One of the more favorable schedules in the SEC. I think it's worth taking a look at potentially a bet for them to make the college football playoff with the new 12-team format that we're in.
Wow.
But you mentioned a lot of the same things that, that I like in this game. One, Riley Leonard's coming off not 1, but 2 surgeries. We don't know exactly where he is health-wise, and it's his ankle, and it's a quarterback who loves to run around. Is he minimized at all? And by the way, there were still a lot of question marks about his ability as a passer. He needed to take that next step forward. A quarterback that only had 3 passing touchdowns last year was one of the hottest commodities out there in the transfer portal market. Notre Dame took that leap of faith to see if he could make it. To go on the road into Kyle Field and to be able to execute an offense in his first year, I have my doubts. Plus, watch out for Nick Scourton, the defensive end for the Aggies, who transferred him from Purdue, had 10 sacks and 15 tackles for losses last year for Purdue. I think he's a breakout star for this Aggie defense. I love the Aggies at home.
DK, loving the Aggies. Hey, when you guys zig, I think I'm going to zag. A lot to chew on here. And look, right before we started taping, Danny, you said it's tough to handicap this new era of college football. All these transfers, these quote-unquote hired guns. How on earth are you able to get a line set before the season starts to understand what's going to happen, as evidenced by your Florida State Seminoles a week ago? Sorry, that's not a shot. A 13.5-point favorite. It closed at 10.5. Of course, they lose outright. This is the first year, a debut for new head coach at Texas A&M, Mike Elko. Yes, he was the former Duke head coach. He coached Riley Leonard, and guess what? He was the former defensive coordinator at Notre Dame just a handful of years ago. And when you look at Riley Leonard, Gabe, you mentioned it, who knows his weaknesses better than Mike Elko? I'm actually going to reverse that. The Aggies have won their last 6 season openers. Yes, Kyle Field is going to be electric. It's a night game. What a huge rivalry. 2 blue bloods in college football, but I'm looking at the 3rd year under head coach Marcus Freeman for the Fighting Irish. This is a huge game for them. A victory here pretty much sets them up to make the college football playoff. The only other game that they literally might be an underdog in is the last game of the regular season at Southern Cal. So I'm going to go with Riley Leonard, those Fighting Irish, Marcus Freeman to take down the Aggies on the road. So I'll love those 3 points. Give me the 3-point underdog, Notre Dame Fighting Irish. All right, Sunday night. Remember, it's Labor Day weekend. We got college football wall to wall. We have an awesome neutral site game. The 23rd ranked Southern Cal Trojans are playing the 13th ranked LSU Tigers, 7:30 p.m. on Sunday night. This game is in Las Vegas. LSU, a 4.5-point favorite, Gabe. A higher total here, 64.5 points for your over-under.
You look at this game, feels like 2 programs that are in a similar spot, replacing Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks and both trying to find their footing on the defensive side of the ball with new defensive coordinators. I know all eyes will be on the quarterback position. I'm sure that's what DK will be watching, right, with Garrett Nussmeier and with Miller Moss for the Trojans. But I trust one unit in this football game, and it is LSU's offensive line led by Will Campbell. I think that group is talented enough and physical enough to just dictate this entire football game. I could see LSU, after a historic offense last season, grinding this one out a little bit and just seeing if USC is ready to play that physical style of game, which has been a bit of a struggle since Lincoln Riley took over. I'm laying the 4.5 with the Tigers. I think that it could be a lower scoring game. I like the under in this football game. I know a lot of people may think, hey, these are going to be two really good offenses. Let's see all the points. The defenses are question marks. But I could see LSU coming in to this football game and kind of wanting to prove a point at the line of scrimmage with their run game. So I'm on LSU, and I like the under in this one, boys.
Gabe, I love the under in this one. You meant, and I heard Drew, you were talking earlier about when people zig, you zag, and I like the same philosophy on this one because everybody's assuming it's just going to be a shootout, right? Both defenses were atrocious last year. Both have a lot to replace on the offensive side of the ball. Not only Jaden Daniels, but 2 first-round wide receivers gone. And I know they find wide receivers like they're growing on trees in Baton Rouge, but they're still going to take some time for some continuity to develop between Garrett Nussmeier and his wide receiving core. And behind an incredible offensive line, maybe one of the best in the country, I do think they try to establish the run, take some of that workload off Garrett Nussmeier's shoulders in his first big game as the starter for LSU. And then conversely, Miller Moss was great for USC in the bowl game, 6 touchdown passes, but I think there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve for him as well. Plus, both teams have new defensive coordinators. They're going to be feeling each other out. They'll throw new schemes out there, new blitzes. Could be a little bit confounding early for the offenses to get going. Look, I don't think it's going to be a 9-6 ball game by any means, but up there in the mid-60s is too high for me, so I'll go under.
Taking a look at this game, there's really 2 things that I can't get out of my head, guys. One is LSU's atrocious defensive unit from a season ago. And 2, the fact that LSU has lost their last 4 season openers, seemingly just finding a way to snatch defeat out of the jaws of victory. Yes, new quarterback this year in Garrett Nussmeier. Brian Kelly returns. Seems like he's starting to find his groove in LSU. But on the flip side, head coach Lincoln Riley for Southern Cal, I think his hot seat is getting a little bit hotter. And yes, USC making their Big Ten debut. I'll say this as well. I know there's this old saying that Las Vegas isn't ready for us, that meme on the internet. I truly do believe that Las Vegas may not be ready for LSU's fan base to descend on Sin City this Labor Day weekend. Should be a great environment inside Allegiant Stadium. There's just a lot of points here. 4.5 points, the total being 64.5 would lead to a higher scoring game. I think Lincoln Riley's going to be able to scheme up some stuff. Expect USC to find some chunk plays on offense, put some points on the board. So I think this game does tick over. I'm going against Danny here. And I think USC has a real opportunity to win this game outright. Love Miller Moss. Love this USC offense. Again, the pressure that Lincoln Riley is under and the ability for them to make a statement to start out 2024 with the potential victory over a top 15 SEC team in LSU. So I don't have a lot of confidence with LSU in these season openers. I think Lincoln Riley having that pressure is going to have him really create some excitement on the offensive side of the ball. So I love the 4.5 points with USC, guys. And I also think that they could win this game outright. What a great matchup on your televisions late Sunday night to keep Labor Day rolling. So many good games this weekend. It's Labor Day weekend. This is Sports Insider, all lines provided by, of course, Bet Online. So thankful that my man Gabe Ikard is back for this 2024 college football season. And you know, if it's a big week, we're bringing in the big guns. Danny Kanell will be with us in and out all season long. Guys, thank you so much. I'm Drew Butler. Allie, we'll send it back to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Drew Butler, Gabe Ikard, and Danny Kanell. My goodness, what a joy to have all 3 of you on this week talking about what should be an absolutely epic weekend this long Labor Day weekend. Well, my friends, that wraps it up for The Spin this week. Be sure to head on over to sportsinsider.com to get all the latest odds, news, and info for everything college football related. Enjoy week 1 of the college football season. We'll catch you up next time on everything you need to know at Sports Insider's The Spin.